Let me congratulate, Mr. Speaker, previous opposition orators, who I think, to my mind, have forcefully expressed the desperation of the BAI, ex-BAI policyholders and the anger felt by many of our people about the way that the assets have been disposed and the way the whole BAI liquidation has, if that's the word, has been carried out. My first point, Mr. Speaker, do we really want to come and maintain the system where the supplementary appropriation bill is passed months and months and months after the actual expenditure has been incurred? The Minister before me has just said that the payment has already been made, 11 billion rupees, 12 billion rupees in December. So this is merely a rubber stamp. Whatever we say here is for the record, is for the Hansard. It has already been paid. The special COVID allowance has already been paid. The pensions have already been paid. So we are just now rubber stamping. And I'm asking the question, which is a serious question, as to whether we want to continue in this format, in this respect, having this procedure, where this assembly, which one thing it has a power to do is approve government expenditure, whereas with this way of doing things, we are actually not doing nothing at all because it has already been paid. The special COVID allowance, like many others, Mr. Speaker, we are happy. Policemen got the 15,000 rupees, healthcare workers, but it's good, Mr. Speaker, that we make the point that others did not. Scavengers, Mr. Speaker, what have they done wrong? They were picking up our rubbish all through the confinement. And it's not a pleasant job. Firemen at the same time. They answered every single call there was during the COVID, during the confinement, yet they got nothing. And the poor supermarket workers, Mr. Speaker, some of the lowest paid workers in this country. I think, Mr. Speaker, it is not too late that we make provision in the House here for payment to these category of people, especially, Mr. Speaker, the poor supermarket workers, who for me are as essential a worker as any other of these other persons. Mr. Speaker, I'll come now to the issue of pensions. 375 million rupees being voted today, already paid, most of it, for additional people coming onto the pension roll. First thing you ask yourself is why at least hasn't the purchasing power of these poor pensioners been maintained? 230 rupees, a mere 230 rupees, would have been enough for government to maintain the dignity of our old people and maintain the purchasing power at a time when the rupee, which used to be worth $35 rupees to the dollar, now 41 rupees to the dollar, has created an extremely expensive situation, being given that the old, Mr. Speaker, they spend a lot of money on pharmacy, on medicine, etc. And the old age basket is not the same as the basket that Statistics Mauritius uses for the rest of the nation. Now, we are in 2021. We have been promised an increase of 4,500 rupees per month per pensioner in 3 years' time. 50% increase in the pension. Now, the Minister here is asking us to vote for 335 million. That's going to be for additional pensioners. So by 2024, not only will we have additional pensioners, which we will, but we will have also to account for a 50% increase in the pension, which I'm okay with. I'm okay with that. But please, Mr. Minister of Finance, tell us how it will be achieved. We have had the CSG, which has been called a Ponzi by actuaries. The CSG, Contribution Sociale Généralisée, which is anyway insufficient even to pay for the pensions that has already been given. So the CSG is already, for the higher paid people in Mauritius, a tax of 9% on the payroll. So what it will be? It will be 20%. Tell us, how are you going to fund your promise that you have made, and that we will hold you to account, and we will see to it that you honor your promise. The second point, I will talk about an elephant in the room, and that is obviously the 11.9 billion rupees we are asked to approve a payment that has already been made by government without approval by the Assembly, because it's now being approved, to the National Property Fund. So what would happen if we did not approve that today? Already been paid. This is the absurdity of what we are voting today. Now, Mr. Speaker, much has been said about the closure of BAI, but this is what I said, Mr. Speaker, in this House as Deputy Prime Minister on 15th of April 2015, is that the conservators, liquidators, receivers, and I'm quoting, and whoever will be dealing with all these companies, preserve and achieve as much value to the various stakeholders as possible, so that the deposit holders in Brahma Bank, the insurance policy holders in British American Insurance, the creditors, and everybody can retrieve as much of the debt as possible from the conglomerate. It is very important that we preserve as much as possible of the value that exists in the company. We had another way in the previous government of dealing with it, that is reducing substantially the related party transactions from 88% when I became Minister of Finance to 56%, and it would have been gone the same way. Maybe it would have been closed at the end of the day with a much smaller payment from government. So who is to say that over the next 3 years it would not have fallen to 30%? In which case the hole that exists still. Let's come now to the issue at hand. We are being asked to approve the payment, of nearly 8,000 million rupees to a company called 𝗕𝗶𝗹𝗹. 𝗕𝗶𝗹𝗹 has not filed any audited accounts. What the 𝗕𝗶𝗹𝗹 has filed is a financial summary. And I will table the financial summary. A financial summary is an unaudited document. A financial summary filed by government, today I picked it up from Mrs. Senior herself, is an audited piece of paper that has been filed. It is 3 pages long. And this, Mr. Speaker, just to show everybody else who's not an accountant, this is the financial statements, not a financial summary, of NIC Limited. That is what has been filed for NIC Limited, and 3 pages have been filed for 𝗕𝗶𝗹𝗹. And when you look at the pages that have been filed for 𝗕𝗶𝗹𝗹, you do not have any of the information that he has just given to us today, Mr. Speaker. And this is, in fact, what has been filed. I will table it so that the Minister can see the difference between what he has filed and what said he has filed, and it is, unfortunately, I will not the word misleading, but it is, in fact, not the truth what you have said, and I think, hopefully, you will withdraw that later on as a gentleman. A company of which we are asked to invest 12 billion rupees of our money has only filed unaudited 3-page piece of paper. Now, on that, Mr. Speaker, it is why. You know why it is so? I'll tell you why it is so. This company has assets of 10 billion rupees. Is that so? 11 billion rupees. 11 billion rupees assets that the company has. But its turnover, the fruits of this 11 billion rupees that this company has, is only 32 million rupees per annum, Mr. Speaker. That shows you what wastage there has been in that company, that you put 11 billion rupees worth of assets. If you put it in the bank, you will get more money. 11 billion rupees worth of assets only generates 30 billion rupees of income, and that is why it is able to file a financial summary. Because small and medium enterprises file financial summaries when the turnover is less than 50 million. And that is why the government has used this procedure effectively to deny the public any knowledge at all of what happens at 𝗕𝗶𝗹𝗹. And I would say, Mr. Speaker, is it a serious government that would ask us to vote 12 billion rupees to pay for a company, and shamefully only files 3 pages that the public or ourselves as parliamentarians can access? Is that, Mr. Speaker, the type of government that we want? Is that what you're saying, Mr. Minister, that we should accept your word for it? File the actual financial statements, audited, and then we talk. Then we will know what has happened. Then we will know what use has been put to 11 billion rupees of assets to generate only 30 million rupees of turnover, and a loss at the end of the day. Big loss, nearly 200 million rupees loss, Mr. Speaker. Then we can talk. Don't hide things. Don't hide, Mr. Speaker. 254 million rupee loss for the period. I will table that, Mr. Speaker. You can see I am telling the truth. When I look at the estimate of supplementary expenditure, and you know, we all understand English. We know what an investment is, what a payment is, and what a conversion is. I'm converting a loan that someone owes me to share capital. That's a conversion. But it's not a conversion when I am repaying somebody else's loan with my money. That is not a conversion. That is repayment of a loan with fresh capital. This, Mr. Speaker, is misleading. Provision required to convert the advance provided to the company into equity. It is not the advance provided by government that is being converted, is it? You've just said so yourself. It is the advance provided by the banks. On a small amount, 600 million, you just said so yourself. 600 million was paid, is being converted. The rest is a repayment of a loan given by a private sector bank to NPFL, for which the NPFL has been unable to repay because of such poor, paltry results. It has not been able to pay its loan back to SBM and others, and the government is putting taxpayers' money into it. And that is the truth, and this is, Mr. Speaker, not the truth, the conversion. It is not what is happening. No, it's not. Now, Mr. Speaker, mention was made also with the Britam Commission of Inquiry. Now, I have respect for all judges, all ex-judges, but is it this ex-judge, Mr. Speaker, has taken 4 years to inquire into a single transaction, the sale of assets? 4 years, Mr. Speaker. Now, what self-respect would you have? Okay, COVID's been 1 year. What self-respect would you have? The Commission of Inquiry. Okay, probably he's found nothing. If he's found everything, he would have come up with something. There's no report. We can presume that there's nothing to be reported on. But he must have the decency to report and finish with it. A Commission of Inquiry on one single transaction cannot take 4 years. Cannot take 4 years. It is unfair on all the people involved, including unfair on the policyholders of BAI, who are entitled to know what happened. It is, of course, unfair on everyone else whose name has been put into cause in this issue. Let's hope that the government will have the decency to publish this, whatever it is, it says there, to publish the report soon as possible, Mr. Speaker. Now, NIC, it is, Mr. Speaker just said it is restructuration. What's restructuration? What does restructuration mean? What happened in NIC is quite clear. When it took over the assets of ex-BAI, it brought the value down by 4 billion rupees. You know that, I know that. The value of the assets were brought down by 4 billion rupees because it thought it was valued at less. Whether it's right or wrong, we don't know. And that is what's happening, no restructuration. We are putting government money now to fill up the coffers of NIC so that it balances the books, because the whole of 4 billion rupees, plus the losses, etc., that have been made in the past, Mr. Speaker. And the point is, the remaining assets of the BAI, what are they? Apollo? We know that Apollo is being rented, I think, at 60 million rupees a year. Any estate agent will tell you what the value is. You divide it by 0.05%, you get the value of what it is. 1.2 billion would be Apollo on the basis of the rental. Minister of Finance can confirm that. Now, and then so Apollo not worth all that much. Certainly not the 2.5 that I mentioned by my colleague. So the government will have to step in and pay. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, we have 𝗲𝗂𝗪𝗃. 𝗲𝗂𝗪𝗃 is loss-making. Accumulated losses at 𝗲𝗂𝗪𝗃. There you go. And then what else you have? NIC. NIC, we just put 4 billion rupees of good money in there. Still, we'll need to put another 1.7 billion rupees. The minister has just confirmed. So there's no value in these companies anymore. They're just sucking up, swallowing government funds. And so, Mr. Speaker, a conservative estimate of what it has cost the taxpayer, the BAI affair. I'll tell you what it is. It's 11.9 billion rupees today. It's 3.5 billion rupees that the Bank of Mauritius, you said so yourself also, has invested in the company, has lent to the company. It's 6 billion rupees that has been put into 𝗲𝗂𝗪𝗃. Okay, I agreed 𝗲𝗂𝗪𝗃 is in fact two banks, but still, I don't have the breakdown. Let's say 6 billion rupees into 𝗲𝗂𝗪𝗃. It's, Mr. Speaker, another 1.7 billion rupees that government has already committed to pay the NIC. Minister has just said so himself a moment ago, to come to 5.7 billion rupees to NIC. And the shortfall for Apollo, which will be a minimum of 1.1 million, because the Minister of Finance has given an undertaking that it will meet any shortfall. So that, Mr. Speaker, it's more than 24 billion rupees that the public funds have been used. Very little chance of recuperating any of it. After 6 years, obviously, we would have done so. And it is now that the NIC is going to run and strictly control costs. I don't know if the minister realizes how ridiculous it is to say after 6 years that the NIC will now be well run, reduce its costs, etc., as if people there have been sleeping for the last 6 years. But still, so we're talking about, Mr. Speaker, 24.2 billion at my conservative estimate of public funds. Now, the actual amount of the policyholders, how many was it? Who remembers how much the actual policyholders were owed? 24 billion, I think. So, what's happened to any assets of the company? Has it just been wasted in expenditure, in interest paid, blah, blah, blah? 24 billion rupees of government money has gone in. There were originally 24 billion rupees of policyholders' funds. And not all hasn't paid. So, the only conclusion is that when I said back then in 2015, when I spoke as Deputy Prime Minister, I said that the most important thing is to preserve value of the assets. That hasn't been done, because it's clear that hardly any assets have been realized, anyway not sufficient to cover even the running costs for all these years and the wastage and the writing-offs that has happened. So this, Mr. Speaker, sir, is a national scandal called ex-British American Insurance, managed by this gentleman. We end up with this situation.